The Lost Empires of the Amazon, Mysteries of Ancient South America Introduction, The Jungle That Hides Empires. Welcome back to History Wake, the place where forgotten worlds come alive. Tonight, I invite you to dim the lights, tuck yourself into a cozy bed or your favorite chair, and let the noise of the outside world fall away. Take a deep breath, let your mind relax, and come with me. We're about to drift far away from the present, into the depths of time, into the heart of the jungle. They say the Amazon is the lungs of the earth, but it's also its memory. Beneath the dense canopy of trees, winding rivers, and the hum of cicadas, lie the scattered remnants of empires long forgotten, not ruins of stone temples like those of Egypt or Greece, but silent echoes. Geometric patterns traced into the earth, blackened soil left by careful cultivation, and the quiet persistence of those who remember for centuries. The Amazon was seen by outsiders as a green void, a place untouched by civilization. The people of the West believed that such a vast, humid, and hostile forest could not possibly support complex human life, let alone great cities. But what if we were wrong? What if entire civilizations thrived here, hidden by time and overgrown by nature? What if the jungle isn't hiding nothing, but hiding everything? Tonight, we embark on a journey 5,000 years into the past and across the sprawling basin of the Amazon River. We will follow the clues left behind by its ancient inhabitants, from mysterious geoglyphs to sophisticated city grids carved in dirt. This is not the story you were told in school. This is the story of empires without stone, cities without monuments, and people who understood the forest so deeply that they transformed it into a garden. This is the story of the lost empires of the Amazon. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The First Footprints. Pre-Columbian South America. Before we can uncover the ruins and rediscover the cities swallowed by jungle, we must go even further back. Back to a time before there were cities, before agriculture, before memory. The Amazon, as it sprawls across 9 countries today, was not always covered in forest. In the earliest human eras, vast stretches of what is now dense jungle were once a mosaic of savannas, floodplains, and open forests, diverse and dynamic environments teeming with life. And in these fertile lands, the first humans arrived. Archaeological evidence suggests that human beings were present in South America as early as 13,000 years ago, perhaps even earlier. Sites like Monte Verde in Chile have challenged the once dominant Clovis first theory of human migration. And the Amazon, it was no exception. The Caverna da Pedra Pintada, or Painted Rock Cave, in Brazil, holds some of the earliest signs of human presence in the Amazon basin. There, archaeologists have uncovered tools and cave paintings that date back over 11,000 years. These people were hunter-gatherers, skilled and mobile. They knew the rivers, they tracked the herds, they understood the plants and weather, and though we often imagine them as primitive, their survival in one of the most complex ecosystems on Earth suggests a deep knowledge passed through generations. But over time, something began to change. Evidence from ancient middens, garbage heaps of shells, bones, and food remains tell us that people began to settle in specific areas for longer periods. They returned to the same riverside spots. They harvested wild fruits and roots, and eventually they began to plant. What followed was one of the most underappreciated agricultural revolutions in human history. Long before the Inca rose in the Andes, and long before Columbus crossed the Atlantic, the people of the Amazon were domesticating plants. Manioc, peanuts, chili peppers, cacao. Yes, cacao. The bean from which chocolate is made. We often associate chocolate with the Maya or Aztecs, but some of the earliest evidence of cacao use comes not from Central America, but from the Amazon basin. As early as 5,300 years ago, people along the upper reaches of the Amazon were fermenting and using cacao, not for sweet desserts, but for bitter, sacred drinks. The jungle was not an obstacle to civilization. It was a partner, and in this partnership, the people began to shape the land. One of the most stunning pieces of evidence of early Amazonian sophistication comes from what archaeologists call terra preta, dark earth. Unlike the nutrient-poor natural soils of the Amazon, terra preta is rich, black, and capable of sustaining agriculture for generations. It didn't occur naturally. It was created intentionally. A blend of charcoal, fish bones, pottery shard, and composted organic material. This soil was engineered by ancient Amazonians. Some believe as far back as 6,000 years ago. This was not primitive, this was sustainable farming on a massive scale. As populations grew and communities flourished, these early societies built villages, ceremonial centers, and perhaps even proto-cities. Archaeologists have found intricate mounds and ring-shaped structures, suggesting communal organization, gathering spaces, and ritual activity. Some believe these were places of governance or trade. Others suggest they were aligned with celestial events. There is also evidence of fish weirs, complex systems built from sticks and stones in rivers and floodplains to trap fish. Not just subsistence, but surplus, an ability to feed more than one family. The beginnings of a society. In places like the Llanos de Moxos in Bolivia, early Amazonians created massive raised fields and causeways across wetlands, carefully managing water levels for year-round agriculture. They sculpted the land to fit their needs. In short, they engineered their environment, not with bulldozers, but with knowledge, patience, and an intimate connection to nature. The ancient footprints, still faint beneath the forest floor, were growing bolder, and soon those footprints would lead us to even more astonishing discoveries. In our next chapter, we follow the clues that modern science has uncovered and meet the people who dared to say that the Amazon held cities. Chapter 2. Cities in the Forest, Rediscovering a Forgotten World. As recently as the mid-20th century, the idea of complex societies thriving in the Amazon was dismissed by mainstream archaeology. Scholars believed the rainforest was too harsh, its soils too poor, and its environment too unstable to support anything beyond scattered tribes of nomadic peoples. But then, the jungle began to speak, not with words, but with lines, circles, grids, traces of symmetry that nature never makes. In the late 1970s, as deforestation began to cut deeper into the Amazon, something unexpected emerged from the newly cleared land. Massive, geometric earthworks, squares, circles, and interconnecting lines, carved into the earth with remarkable precision. Stretching for hundreds of meters, these structures seemed to appear out of nowhere, hidden beneath the forest canopy for centuries, possibly millennia, and there were not just a few. As satellite imagery became more widespread and tools like LiDAR light detection and ranging came into use, researchers began to uncover hundreds of these mysterious formations, eventually thousands. These weren't the remnants of random campsites. These were planned. In 2009, archaeologist Michael Heckenberger made headlines with a bold claim that large, organized settlements had existed in the Amazon, complete with road systems, defensive ceremonial plazas, and even suburbs. Heckenberger and his team had been working in the Upper Xingu region of Brazil, alongside the Kukuro people, descendants of those who had lived in the area for generations. With their guidance, the team uncovered remnants of complex Pre-Columbian urbanism. Settlements were connected by causeways aligned to cardinal directions, Moats encircled communities. Roads ran straight and wide. They called them garden cities. Unlike the dense stone cities of the Maya or the Inca, these Amazonian cities were woven into the forest, built of earth, wood, and organic material. They lived with the jungle, not against it. But this raised a question. If these cities were so advanced, what happened to them? Why didn't the Spanish and Portuguese chroniclers mention anything like this? The answer may lie in timing and tragedy. By the time Europeans arrived in the Amazon in the early 16th century, disease had already swept ahead of their ships. Smallpox, influenza, measles, silent killers that moved faster than horses or boats, decimated indigenous populations. Entire communities vanished without a trace. And what stone preserved in Egypt or Greece, the jungle consumed in silence. The cities were abandoned, the earthworks buried beneath new growth, oral histories shattered. All that remained were whispers in the forest and patterns in the soil. But now, centuries later, modern science is giving us the tools to hear those whispers again. LiDAR technology, which uses lasers to scan beneath the forest canopy, has revolutionized our understanding of Amazonian archaeology. In 2022, a LiDAR survey in the Bolivian Amazon revealed more than 24 previously unknown ancient settlements. Some with massive pyramidal structures, stepped platforms, and intricate road networks. These weren't just villages, they were cities. And not isolated either, but part of a broader network, connected across regions by roads, rivers, and culture. Researchers now estimate that before European contact, the Amazon may have supported 8 to 10 million people. That's not a wilderness. That's a civilization, one that worked with nature, not despite it, one that did not leave behind stone, but instead left behind a living legacy in the soil, the plants, and the people who still walk its rivers today. In our next chapter, we'll dive into the minds and beliefs of these vanished empires, exploring the spiritual worldviews, mythologies, and ceremonial centers that connected their cities to the stars. Because, to truly understand an ancient civilization, we must look not only at what they built, but what they believed. Chapter 3. The sacred cosmos, belief, ritual, and the spiritual map of the Amazon. When we think of ancient civilizations, we often focus on what they built. Temples, roads, palaces, walls. But beneath the stone and soil lies something even more powerful: belief. For the peoples of the ancient Amazon, the forest was not just a resource. It was alive, sacred. A world of spirits, of ancestors, of unseen forces woven into every branch and river current. To them, the physical and spiritual realms were not separate. They were the same reality, one mirrored in the other. And through their rituals, myths, and ceremonial spaces, they navigated that sacred cosmos. Let's go back deep into the forest. Imagine standing at the center of a great circular clearing. Around you, towering walls of earth rise in perfect symmetry, not built for defense, but for meaning. These are not fortresses, they are temples of dirt. Many of the Amazonian geoglyphs, those massive circles and squares carved into the ground, are believed to have been ceremonial centers, places of gathering, of initiation, of communion with the divine. Unlike stone temples, these structures were made from earth and plants, yet they were built with astonishing precision, aligned with the movements of the sun and stars, echoing patterns found in nature. Some researchers believe these circles reflect cosmological models, diagrams of the universe as understood by Amazonian societies. To walk their paths may have been to walk through time itself, through birth and death, through the seasons, through the realms of gods, spirits, and ancestors. In the Upper Xingu, for example, Heckenberger's research uncovered plazas that were central to community life, not just politically or economically, but spiritually. The circular layout of villages mirrored the shape of the cosmos. Roads aligned with solstices. Ceremonial houses stood at the center, representing the axis mundi, the world's spiritual axis, connecting sky, earth, and underworld. In Amazonian belief systems, the world was often seen in layers. Not unlike the cosmologies of the Maya or the Inca, there was the upper world, inhabited by sky beings and celestial forces, the middle world, the forest and rivers where humans live, and the underworld, a place of spirits, serpents, and the dead. Many Amazonian cultures believed shamans could travel between these realms. In trance, in song, in ceremony, they would ascend or descend the cosmic tree, the Yggdrasil of the jungle, to heal, to learn, to restore balance. To the outsider, a ritual might appear chaotic. Songs, drums, smoke, movement, but to the participant, it was a map, a journey, a conversation with the unseen. Plants were more than food or medicine. They were teachers. Ayahuasca, a powerful brew made from vines and leaves, has been used for centuries in Amazonian rituals, not recreationally, but spiritually. Under its influence, shamans claim to see visions of ancestors, of spirits, of the true nature of things. It's not just hallucination, it's revelation. And such plants were treated with great respect, as beings in their own right, with their own consciousness. This view, that the world is alive, informed every aspect of ancient Amazonian life, from how they hunted and farmed, to how they named the stars. Even the forest itself was seen as a kind of temple, a sacred labyrinth of beings, energies, and mysteries. You didn't conquer the forest, you listened to it. And that humility may be the greatest difference between ancient Amazonian civilization and those more familiar to us. They built not to dominate nature, but to live in rhythm with it. But belief is fragile. When the Great Collapse came, when disease and conquest tore through the continent, the ceremonial centers fell silent. The shamans died. The songs were forgotten, or so we thought, because in some places the spirits never left, and the stories, though buried, are still whispered by the fire, by the river, by the forest itself. In the next chapter, we journey forward in time to the moment of first contact, when European explorers entered the green cathedral of the Amazon and saw ... almost nothing, or so they believed, but hidden in their own words, in the diaries of conquistadors and missionaries, are glimpses of what once was, fragments of a world they barely understood, a world already slipping away, a world we are only just beginning to remember. Chapter 4. Sky Temples and Spirit Paths. The sacred cosmos of the Amazon. Every ancient civilization, no matter where it rises, reaches upward to the heavens. The stars have always been humanity's first maps, guides across oceans, calendars for planting and harvest, and gateways to the divine. For the lost empires of the Amazon, the sky was not just a distant realm of stars, it was a living, breathing partner in their world, deeply woven into their architecture, rituals, and understanding of existence itself. Unlike the towering stone pyramids of the Maya or Inca, these ancient Amazonians built with earth, wood, and spirit. But their sacred spaces were no less grand. Some of the most remarkable discoveries in recent decades are the enormous geoglyphs, massive shapes carved into the earth, often circular or rectangular, connected by straight causeways and perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions. These earthworks are no random doodles. They are ancient observatories, Researchers have found that many of these formations line up with the solstices, the longest and shortest days of the year. And with the rising and setting of the sun, others may have tracked the phases of the moon or even the movements of bright stars. Imagine standing at the center of one of these giant earthworks, looking out as the sun rises perfectly over a causeway-aligned northeast, marking the beginning of the planting season. For the people who lived here, this was no mere coincidence. It was a sacred message written across the landscape. But the sky was only part of the story. In the cosmologies of many Amazonian peoples, the universe is layered like a great cosmic onion. Above is the sky world, home to stars, sun, moon, and powerful spirits. In the middle is the earthly realm, where humans, animals, and plants live and breathe. Beneath the earth and waters lies the underworld, a mysterious place of spirits, ancestors, and transformation. Connecting all three realms is the kapok tree, or ceiba, a giant tree sacred to many indigenous cultures. Its roots reach deep into the underworld. Its trunk stands firm in the human world, and its wide canopy brushes the stars. This great tree is not just a symbol, but a bridge. A path for shamans and spirits to travel between worlds. Even today, among the modern descendants of these ancient peoples, the spiritual connection to the cosmos remains vivid. Shamans, spiritual guides, and healers enter trance states through ritual songs and visionary plants, such as ayahuasca, a powerful brew that opens the mind's eye. In these journeys, shamans describe crossing invisible paths, spirit roads, or mariri, that connect villages, rivers, and forests. They meet guardian spirits, jaguars, serpents, river beings, who protect the natural and supernatural world alike. To Western eyes, these experiences may seem like hallucinations or mythology, but for the shamans and their communities, this is the deepest reality, the source of their knowledge and power. Archaeologists studying ancient Amazonian settlements have begun to see the physical imprint of these beliefs in the very layout of the villages and ceremonial centers. Villages were not haphazardly arranged, but followed cosmic principles. Roads ran straight, sometimes for miles, connecting plazas, mounds, and earthworks in patterns reflecting the cosmos. Circular plazas echoed the sun's path. Mounds and terraces may have symbolized the ascent to the heavens or the emergence from the watery underworld. These spaces were designed not just for daily life, but for ritual, governance, and connection. When communities gathered for festivals, they were not just socializing. They were participating in sacred ceremonies that reinforced the bonds between people, spirits, and nature. Even the construction of mounds and raised fields carried symbolic meaning. Raised earth could represent emergence, the birth of life from water, the ascent of the soul after death, or the meeting point of earth and sky. Each mound, each pathway was an act of creation, a prayer carved into the land. The people of the Amazon lived in a world where land, water, and sky were alive, where the forest was not a barrier but a sacred garden tended by many hands. They understood that to thrive, they must work with nature, not against it. This was a civilization rooted in respect, balance, and reciprocity, and though centuries of silence have hidden their stories, the spirit of those lost empires still lingers in the trees, the rivers, and the songs of the people who call the Amazon home today. In our next chapter, we will explore a darker chapter in this story, how contact with Europeans brought not conquest, but collapse, how disease, violence, and displacement erased these great cultures from memory. Join me as we turn the page to Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Collapse. contact, and silence for millennia. The great civilizations of the Amazon flourished in an intricate balance with a forest. Their cities hummed with life. Bustling plazas, busy waterways, markets filled with color and sound. But as the 15th century waned and the age of exploration dawned, everything began to unravel. Europeans sailed across the Atlantic, chasing myths of gold, spices, and uncharted lands. When the conquistadors set foot in the Amazon, they found not an empty wilderness, but vibrant societies, complex, deeply rooted, and rich in culture. Yet, this encounter was not a meeting of equals. The newcomers brought with them iron weapons, horses, and unfamiliar technologies, but more devastatingly, they carried invisible enemies. Diseases, smallpox, measles, influenza illnesses that had ravaged Europe for centuries, but which the indigenous peoples of the Americas had never encountered. No one saw the silent killers coming. These diseases spread faster than armies or ships ever could. Entire villages fell ill and died within weeks. Survivors fled into the forest, only to carry sickness further into the interior. The demographic collapse was catastrophic. Some estimates suggest that in the century following European contact, the population of the Amazon basin fell by as much as 90%. Cities emptied. The great earthworks were abandoned. The roads that once connected communities grew over with vines and trees. The forest reclaimed what had been shaped by human hands. But disease was only part of the tragedy. European colonization brought violence, enslavement, and cultural destruction. Conquistadors and missionaries sought to impose their own orders, religions, and economic systems. They enslaved indigenous peoples, forcing them into labor on plantations, in mines, and on colonial projects. Sacred sites were destroyed, oral traditions suppressed, languages lost. The connection between people and land, spiritual, cultural, and practical, was violently severed. Why is it, then, that so few written records mention these vanished Amazonian empires? Why did European chroniclers describe the region as empty, wild, and savage? The answer lies in timing and tragedy. The diseases arrived first, killing millions before the conquistadors even set foot inland. When the Europeans explored, the societies they encountered were but shadows of their former selves. Small, scattered, and disoriented, without large cities or strong political structures to greet them, the invaders assumed the land had always been a wilderness. A myth took root, that the Amazon was a pristine wilderness, untouched by humans. But this myth, we now know, is false. The Amazon is a cultural landscape shaped by its peoples for thousands of years. Its soils, its rivers, its very trees carry the imprint of human hands. Today, the story is being rewritten. Archaeologists equipped with satellite imagery and LiDAR technology pierce the forest's veil, uncovering the hidden cities and networks lost to time. Every new discovery challenges old assumptions and reveals a past more complex than anyone imagined. And the legacy lives on in the people themselves, the indigenous communities who still inhabit the Amazon, preserving languages, knowledge, and traditions passed down through countless generations. They are the living bridges to the lost empires. The Amazon's story is one of loss, but also of resilience, survival, and renewal. As we turn the page to Chapter 6, we'll explore how ancient knowledge and modern science join forces to reclaim history and protect the future. Chapter 6. Reclaiming the past. Modern science and ancient wisdom for centuries. The story of the Amazon was told largely through the lens of outsiders, explorers, missionaries, and early scientists who arrived with preconceived notions. To them, the Amazon was a dark, impenetrable wilderness. a vast, empty void where complex societies could not survive. This narrative painted indigenous peoples as scattered, primitive groups without the hallmarks of civilization seen elsewhere. No towering stone temples, no grand cities, no empires. It was a story born from misunderstanding and limited knowledge. But today, thanks to advances in technology and a growing respect for indigenous voices, that story is changing. The Amazon is revealing its true history. One of thriving cultures, innovative engineering, and deep ecological wisdom. At the forefront of this transformation is LiDAR technology. Unlike traditional archaeological methods that require physically clearing dense jungle or digging through layers of soil, LiDAR uses lasers fired from aircraft to map the ground beneath the forest canopy with astonishing detail. These laser pulses bounce back, creating a three-dimensional image of the landscape below, revealing roads, plazas, terraces, and entire settlements invisible to the naked eye. LiDAR surveys in places like Bolivia and Brazil have uncovered massive urban complexes, complete with pyramidal platforms and causeways connecting villages. These discoveries challenge the idea that the Amazon was sparsely inhabited, and instead suggest it supported populations numbering in the millions. Sophisticated societies with urban planning, social hierarchies, and complex trade networks, but the rediscovery of these lost cities is only part of the story. Equally important is the collaboration between scientists and indigenous communities, whose oral histories, cultural practices, and traditional knowledge provide context and meaning to these archaeological finds. Indigenous peoples are the living descendants of those ancient societies. Their deep understanding of the forest ecosystem is not only cultural but practical. They know which plants heal, which crops thrive, and how to manage the land without destroying it. Their wisdom reveals that the Amazon was not a wild, untamed place, but a landscape actively shaped and cared for over thousands of years. This holistic view of the Amazon as a managed environment is supported by discoveries like terra preta, the rich, fertile black earth created by ancient peoples through the intentional addition of charcoal, bone, pottery, shards, and organic waste. This soil retains nutrients far longer than natural Amazonian soil, enabling sustained agriculture even in an otherwise challenging environment. Terra preta stands as a testament to ancient ingenuity and sustainable land management, inspiring modern scientists and ecologists to explore new ways to combat soil degradation and climate change. Beyond soil science, the integration of indigenous knowledge is helping reshape conservation efforts today. Protecting indigenous lands and honoring their stewardship is increasingly recognized as vital to preserving the rainforest and its biodiversity. The very people who have nurtured these forests for millennia are key allies in the fight against deforestation and environmental collapse. The blending of modern science with ancient wisdom is creating a richer, more accurate picture of the Amazon's past, one that acknowledges complexity, resilience, and the intimate bond between people and their environment. This fusion of perspectives also carries a powerful message for our own time. The ancient Amazonians did not dominate the forest by force. They worked in harmony with it. Their agricultural methods, community organization, and respect for nature allowed them to flourish for thousands of years. In a world grappling with climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental degradation, their legacy offers hope and guidance. As we look back across the centuries, we see that the lost empires of the Amazon were not erased by the forest, but woven into it. Their influence enduring in the soil, the plants and the living cultures that continue to thrive along its rivers. Reclaiming this past challenges us to rethink what civilization truly means. It urges us to move beyond outdated definitions. Based on monumental stone architecture, and instead appreciate societies defined by their relationship with the natural world. The Amazon story is no longer one of mystery and myth alone, but a living history, a bridge connecting ancient wisdom with modern science, past lessons with future possibilities. As we stand at this crossroads, the question is clear. How will we choose to honor and protect this heritage? How will we listen to the whispers of the forest and learn from the people who have called it home for thousands of years? The answers lie ahead. Chapter 7. The People of the Forest. Language, Culture, and Legacy. The story of the Amazon is often told through the lens of lost empires, buried cities, and forgotten civilizations. Yet, the true heart of the forest's history is not just in stone ruins or mysterious earth. It beats alive in the people who have continuously inhabited these lands for thousands of years. The indigenous peoples of the Amazon are not relics of the past, but vibrant, living cultures whose ancestral roots run deep into the history of the region's ancient empires. Ancestral ties to lost civilizations, contrary to the popular myth that the peoples of the Amazon vanished with the arrival of European colonizers or were wiped out by disease and conflict. Many indigenous groups maintain unbroken connections to their ancestral lands and cultural traditions. These communities have preserved elements of ancient knowledge, agricultural techniques, and spiritual beliefs that link directly to the societies that once flourished here. Linguistic studies reveal that some indigenous language families trace back thousands of years, surviving long after the collapse or transformation of large urban centers. For instance, the Tupi-Guarani language family, spread across vast areas of South America, carries vestiges of shared history, migration, and cultural exchange dating back millennia. Similarly, the Arawakan Carib language families represent diverse peoples who still live across the Amazon basin and beyond, with oral traditions that recount ancestral origins, migrations, and encounters with the forest and neighboring tribes. These language groups are more than mere communication tools. They are living records of history, encoding the names of places, rituals, plants, animals, and cosmologies that connect the present to a distant past. The power of oral histories. While ancient empires left behind monumental architecture, pottery, and earthworks, much of their culture survives in oral form. The Amazon's indigenous peoples have long relied on storytelling to preserve their histories, laws, and knowledge of the natural world. These oral traditions serve multiple purposes. They educate the young, maintaining cultural continuity. They record historical events, migrations, and conflicts, and they encode practical knowledge about medicinal plants, hunting practices, agricultural cycles, and seasonal rhythms. Knowledge essential for survival in a complex ecosystem. Among many Amazonian tribes, stories of creation, ancestral heroes, and cosmic battles reveal a profound worldview that links humans, animals, and spirits in a shared cosmic dance. These narratives often explain natural phenomena, the origins of the forest, and the place of humans within it. For example, the Yanomami people of the Amazon hold rich myths about their ancestors emerging from caves or the earth, journeying across the forest, and learning to live in harmony with its rhythms. Similarly, they recount stories of epic battles and alliances that shaped their territory and social structure. These oral histories are living, dynamic traditions, not static relics. They adapt and grow, incorporating new experiences while maintaining core elements passed down through countless generations. Traditions of agriculture, medicine, and cosmology. One of the most remarkable continuities between ancient empires and today's indigenous peoples is their deep knowledge of agriculture. Unlike the simplistic view of Amazonian tribes as purely, many groups practice sophisticated forms of cultivation, managing soil, fertility, crop diversity, and forest resources in ways that mirror techniques used by their ancestors. The cultivation of manioc, maize, peanuts, and numerous other crops forms the backbone of indigenous subsistence. Techniques like swidden agriculture are practiced with an intricate understanding of ecological balance, ensuring that plots are only cleared for short periods before being left fallow to recover. This agricultural knowledge extends to the creation of terra preta, the fertile black earth soil made by ancient peoples through controlled burning and composting. Modern indigenous farmers continue to enhance soil fertility with similar organic practices, demonstrating a continuity of ecological wisdom that has sustained life in the Amazon for thousands of years. Traditional medicine is another vital link to the past. Indigenous healers, or shamans, hold a vast pharmacopoeia of plants, each with specific healing properties. This botanical knowledge is transmitted orally and through apprenticeship, often kept secret to protect sacred traditions. Plants like ayahuasca, used in spiritual ceremonies, illustrate how medicine and cosmology are intertwined. These rituals are not merely therapeutic, but serve as portals to other realms, enabling communication with ancestors and spirits, and reinforcing social cohesion and moral codes. The cosmological worldview of many Amazonian peoples reflects a complex understanding of existence as a multi-layered reality. The world is often seen as divided into several realms. The earthly plane, inhabited by humans, a spiritual underworld of ancestors and spirits, and an upper realm of deities and cosmic forces. These cosmologies influence every aspect of life. Hunting practices avoid disturbing sacred animals. Certain plants are protected as gifts from the spirits, and rituals mark transitions from childhood to adulthood or commemorate historical events. The myth of disappearance. The narrative that Amazonian peoples disappeared or were wiped out is a persistent myth that has obscured the resilience and continuity of indigenous cultures. While colonialism, forced displacement, disease, and exploitation have caused immense suffering and population declines, many groups have survived, some adapting, others resisting. Through centuries of upheaval, today, approximately 400 distinct indigenous groups live in the Amazon basin, speaking hundreds of languages and dialects. Some have voluntarily isolated themselves, maintaining traditional ways without outside contact, while others engage actively with regional and national societies. Despite ongoing threats from deforestation, mining, and land grabbing, these communities assert their rights and maintain their cultures with remarkable vitality. They are not remnants of a lost past, but active participants in shaping the future of the Amazon. Their existence challenges the simplistic notion of the rainforest as a pristine wilderness, and instead reveals it as a cultural landscape, deeply imprinted by human hands. Resilience and resistance. Indigenous resilience is evident in the ongoing struggle to protect ancestral lands from encroachment. The Amazon has become a battleground where indigenous groups confront illegal logging, mining, and agricultural expansion through activism, legal battles, and alliances with environmental organizations. Indigenous peoples are increasingly recognized as vital stewards of the forest. Their traditional knowledge is invaluable in monitoring biodiversity and enforcing conservation measures. Culturally, indigenous communities continue to revitalize languages, dances, crafts, and ceremonies, often blending tradition with modern forms of expression like radio, film, and social media. This cultural renaissance reinforces identity and educates broader audiences about indigenous worldviews. Resistance also takes spiritual forms. Many ceremonies serve as acts of cultural survival, healing, and renewal, reaffirming the sacred relationship between people and the forest. The people of the forest are not just survivors, but bearers of a profound legacy, one that challenges us to rethink history, ecology, and what it means to live in harmony with the natural world. Their voices call us to honor the past, while forging a future where ancient wisdom and modern knowledge coexist. Chapter 8. The Final Silence Collapse. Conquest. An obscurity. The vibrant civilizations that once thrived in the Amazon complex societies, with vast networks of cities. Agriculture and culture did not simply vanish overnight. Their decline was a multifaceted process shaped by epidemic diseases, violent conflict, colonial conquest, and centuries of systematic erasure from history. This chapter explores how these forces converged to silence the voices of the Amazon's ancient peoples and obscure their legacy from the global imagination. Epidemics, invisible conquerors. When European explorers and colonizers arrived in the Americas, they unwittingly unleashed an epidemic catastrophe that devastated indigenous populations. Diseases such as smallpox, measles, influenza, and typhus spread with devastating speed through populations with no prior immunity. In the Amazon, the impact was catastrophic. Estimates suggest that upwards of 90% of indigenous peoples died within the first centuries following contact. Entire villages were wiped out, and social structures collapsed under the weight of these invisible enemies. Unlike military conquest, epidemics left no battlefield or monument. Instead, they left ghost towns in silence, erasing generations of knowledge bearers and cultural custodians. Without the elders, shamans, and leaders who transmitted history orally, entire traditions and languages disappeared or were irreversibly altered. The demographic collapse created a vacuum, enabling colonial powers to claim territories with little resistance and erasing the living memory of advanced societies. Once flourished war and conquest. The violent end of sovereignty epidemics weakened indigenous groups, but it was war and conquest that delivered the final blows to many Amazonian civilizations. European colonizers, backed by military technology and political will, pursued aggressive campaigns to subjugate indigenous populations. The Spanish, Portuguese, and later other European powers imposed systems of forced labor, displacement, and conversion. The introduction of firearms and horses transformed conflicts, often tilting the balance decisively in favor of colonizers. In addition, indigenous groups themselves were sometimes pitted against each other, manipulated into alliances or forced migrations that shattered social cohesion. The Amazon's dense forests and vast distances did not shield its peoples indefinitely. Missionary expeditions, colonial and mercenaries penetrated deep into the interior, founding forts, missions, and settlements that displaced or absorbed local populations. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, many once powerful societies had been reduced to fragmented communities under colonial administration, or had vanished entirely. Colonial erasure and the loss of indigenous records. One of the most tragic aspects of the Amazonian collapse was the systematic erasure of indigenous knowledge and records. Unlike civilizations in the Old World, many Amazonian peoples relied heavily on oral tradition rather than written texts. This made their history vulnerable to disruption when communities were dispersed or leaders killed. However, even where records existed in the form of pictographic codices, carvings, or symbolic artifacts, European colonizers often destroyed or suppressed them. The Catholic Church, dominant in the colonization of South America, played a complex role. Missionaries sought to convert indigenous peoples, viewing many traditional practices as pagan or heretical. Many ancient texts and religious artifacts were burned or confiscated, Indigenous ceremonies and languages were banned or discouraged in favor of European norms. European chroniclers often dismissed indigenous accounts as myth or superstition, preferring to write histories that emphasized European superiority and divine right. Moreover, colonial archives tended to record events from the perspective of conquerors' military campaigns, missionary activities, and resource extraction while ignoring or belittling indigenous voices. This selective documentation created a distorted historical record in which the richness of Amazonian civilizations was largely invisible. The Vatican and European chroniclers. The role of the Vatican and European chroniclers in shaping early perceptions of the Amazon is significant. Religious authorities viewed the New World as a site of spiritual conquest. Their chroniclers documented encounters with indigenous peoples, but framed them as savages needing salvation. This theological framing justified cultural suppression and justified the destruction of indigenous knowledge systems. European chroniclers produced early and missionary reports that mixed observation with prejudice, myth, and political agenda. For centuries, these texts shaped European understanding of the Amazon, portraying it as a wild, untamed wilderness inhabited by primitive tribes rather than advanced societies. This narrative was reinforced by the absence of visible monumental architecture comparable to European or Mesoamerican civilizations, leading to the assumption that the Amazon was inhospitable to complex human life. Why 19th century science denied Amazonian history? By the 19th century, scientific paradigms about civilization and history were dominated by Eurocentric assumptions. The Amazon was often dismissed as a virgin wilderness, a vast, uninhabited jungle, incapable of supporting large populations or complex societies. Scientific racism and social Darwinism contributed to this dismissal, viewing indigenous peoples as inferior and their cultures as simplistic. Archaeological methods were, in their infancy, an ill-suited to detect the subtle landscape modifications and earthen constructions of Amazonian civilizations. Early explorers and naturalists, looking for monumental stone cities like those of the Old World, overlooked the Amazon's different forms of urbanism, earthworks, raised fields, and complex agroforestry systems. As a result, the idea of pristine nature in the Amazon took hold, overshadowing evidence of extensive human modification of the landscape. It was only in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, through advances in satellite imagery, LiDAR technology, and that the true scale and sophistication of ancient Amazonian societies began to be understood. Colonialism's long shadow over archaeology. The legacy of colonialism continues to influence archaeology and history in the Amazon today. Early archaeological expeditions were often led by Western scientists working under colonial or national governments, sometimes extracting artifacts for foreign museums without consent from indigenous communities. This extraction frequently disregarded the cultural and spiritual significance of sites for local peoples. Colonial attitudes also shaped research, questions, and interpretations, favoring narratives that minimized indigenous agency and framed colonized peoples as passive or backward. Modern archaeology is increasingly challenging these legacies by collaborating with indigenous groups, recognizing their rights as stewards of cultural heritage. Community-based participatory research and indigenous archaeology are gaining ground, empowering native voices and incorporating traditional knowledge into scientific inquiry. Yet, many challenges remain. Illegal looting, deforestation, and political instability continue to threaten archaeological sites and indigenous lands. Conclusion. The silence breaks. The final silence imposed on Amazonian civilizations is not permanent. The tireless work of indigenous activists, scholars, and archaeologists is restoring lost histories and reclaiming narratives. New discoveries and technologies reveal the deep human imprint on the rainforest and its civilization's complex legacies. Understanding the collapse, conquests, and obscurity of the Amazon's ancient societies is essential, not only for historical justice but for reimagining our relationship with one of the world's most vital ecosystems. In this reclaiming, the silence of centuries begins to break, and the voices of the forest's original peoples rise once more. Chapter 9. The Amazon Today. Memory, survival, and struggle. The Amazon rainforest remains one of the most critical ecosystems on Earth, a vast expanse of biodiversity and natural wealth. But beyond its ecological importance lies a human story that stretches back millennia, one of memory, survival, and struggle. Today, the descendants of the ancient Amazonian civilizations face profound challenges yet continue to assert their identity, reclaim their heritage, and fight for their future. This chapter explores the ongoing saga of the Amazon, the modern threats it faces, the vibrant indigenous rights movement, the resurgence of ancestral knowledge, and the urgent lessons ancient societies offer for sustainability in our time. Modern threats, deforestation, mining, and displacement in the 21st century. The Amazon faces unprecedented threats from human activity. Deforestation is the most visible and devastating force, fueled by logging, agriculture, and cattle ranching. Vast tracts of forest are cleared every year, often illegally, for soy plantations or to make way for infrastructure projects. Mining for gold, bauxite, and other minerals poses another serious threat. Mining operations pollute rivers with mercury and disrupt ecosystems, causing lasting harm to wildlife and local communities who depend on the forest's natural resources. Infrastructure development, including roads and dams, fragments the landscape, facilitating further encroachment and accelerating habitat loss. Each road carved into the forest becomes a corridor for more deforestation. Indigenous communities are caught in the crossfire of these developments. Their ancestral lands are frequently targeted for extraction, leading to forced displacement and social upheaval. Many indigenous groups have no legal title to their territories, making them vulnerable to evictions or violent confrontations with illegal loggers and miners. The social consequences are profound. Displacement disrupts cultural continuity and livelihoods, leading to poverty, loss of traditional knowledge, and health crises. Communities face challenges accessing clean water, food security, and education as their environment is degraded. Climate change compounds these threats. The Amazon's delicate hydrological balance is being altered by rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns. Prolonged droughts increase the risk of forest fires, which were once rare but now occur with alarming frequency. The loss of the Amazon rainforest is not just a regional problem, but has global consequences. The forest acts as a vital carbon sink, regulating the Earth's climate. Its destruction accelerates global warming, threatening the survival of countless species, including humanity itself. Indigenous rights movements and ecological guardianship. Despite these immense pressures, indigenous peoples of the Amazon remain resilient, leading movements for the protection of their lands, cultures, and rights. Across countries like Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia, indigenous organizations have become powerful advocates on local, national, and international stages. These movements emphasize the inseparability of cultural survival and environmental stewardship. Indigenous knowledge systems embody sustainable practices honed over thousands of years. Modern conservation efforts are increasingly recognizing as essential. The struggle for legal recognition of land rights is central. Securing official title to territories protects indigenous communities from encroachment and provides a basis for notable successes include the demarcation of indigenous territories in Brazil, which constitute about 13% of the national territory and harbor a significant portion of the Amazon's biodiversity. Indigenous guardianship extends beyond land titles. Many communities practice forms of forest management that maintain biodiversity and ecosystem health, such as rotational agriculture, controlled burns, and women play key roles in these movements, bridging traditional knowledge with activism and policy advocacy. They safeguard medicinal plant traditions and pass down oral histories that anchor cultural identity. International bodies like the United Nations have recognized indigenous peoples as crucial partners in global environmental efforts. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples affirms rights to land, culture, and self-determination, providing legal frameworks for advocacy. Nevertheless, indigenous activists often face violence and repression. Environmental defenders in the Amazon are among the most endangered groups globally, targeted by illegal loggers, corrupt officials, and sometimes even state forces. The battle for survival is ongoing, marked by both victories and setbacks. Rediscovering heritage. New generations reclaiming ancient stories. The story of the Amazon's peoples is not only one of loss, but also of renewal. Younger generations are reconnecting with their roots, revitalizing languages, customs, and histories once threatened by colonialism and assimilation policies. Education programs, both within indigenous communities and through partnerships with universities and NGOs, foster cultural pride and knowledge transmission. Technology has become a tool for preservation and activism. Digital storytelling, social media, and community radio amplify indigenous voices, sharing ancient stories with global audiences. Cultural festivals celebrate traditional music, dance, and crafts, attracting attention and fostering intercultural dialogue. Language revitalization efforts combat the disappearance of indigenous tongues. Some communities develop bilingual schools or language apps, recognizing that language is a repository of unique worldviews. Oral histories once suppressed are now documented and shared, often blending myth and history to preserve the richness of cultural memory. Elders and knowledge keepers collaborate with researchers to reinterpret archaeological findings in light of indigenous perspectives, challenging earlier narratives imposed by outsiders. This cultural renaissance has broader implications. It not only strengthens identity and cohesion, but also offers alternative ways of understanding humanity's relationship with nature. What ancient Amazonian society can teach us about sustainability? Today, ancient Amazonian civilizations hold crucial lessons for contemporary environmental and social challenges. Their extensive modifications to the rainforest era preta soils, raised fields, complex agroforestry systems demonstrate that human intervention and natural ecosystems can coexist sustainably. The creation of fertile soils from otherwise poor, tropical earth is a remarkable example of ecological engineering. Terra preta, or black earth, enriched with charcoal, bones, and organic waste, remains fertile centuries later, highlighting the potential for regenerative agriculture. Agroforestry practices mimicked natural forest structures, cultivating diverse crops alongside trees, maintaining soil health, and supporting biodiversity. These societies operated within a worldview that saw humans as part of a larger ecological and spiritual system, emphasizing balance and reciprocity. In contrast to modern industrial agriculture's extractive models, ancient practices fostered resilience and long-term productivity. This perspective is increasingly relevant as modern society confronts climate change, soil degradation, and biodiversity loss. Indigenous knowledge systems, informed by millennia of observation and adaptation, offer insights into ecosystem management and sustainability. Today, efforts to incorporate traditional ecological knowledge into conservation strategies are growing, demonstrating that ancient wisdom and modern science are not mutually exclusive but complementary. Furthermore, the social structures of ancient Amazonian peoples often emphasized community cooperation and shared stewardship, providing models for collaborative resource management. Conclusion: the Amazon's living legacy, the Amazon rainforest today, is a place of paradoxy, of immense beauty and vitality, but also profound vulnerability. The memory of its ancient civilizations lives on, not only in the archaeological record, but in the hearts and practices of indigenous peoples who continue to shape the forest's destiny. Their struggle against environmental destruction and cultural erasure is a testament to human resilience and the enduring power of memory. As the world awakens to the Amazon's importance, the voices of those who call it home grow louder. In embracing their heritage and defending their lands, indigenous communities remind us that the story of the Amazon is far from over. It is a story of survival, renewal, and hope, a story that challenges us to rethink our place within the natural world and to strive for a more sustainable future. Conclusion: cities beneath the leaves. For centuries, the Amazon has been a place of mystery, an immense, seemingly impenetrable forest, a world unto itself. To many outsiders, it was a blank space on maps, a wilderness untouched by complex human history. The prevailing narrative for generations held that the Amazon was simply an inhospitable jungle, unsuitable for large civilizations. This notion shaped much of how the world understood the region, and it influenced the way indigenous peoples and their histories were perceived or ignored. But what if history is wrong? What if the story we have accepted about the Amazon, about its ancient peoples and their fate, is incomplete, shaped as much by what we failed to see as by what we were able to uncover? The vanishing of civilizations. More than war and catastrophe, we often imagine the fall of great civilizations as dramatic events. Armies clashing, cities burning, rulers toppled. Yet, the disappearance of the Amazonian civilizations challenges that idea. There was no single cataclysmic war, no sweeping conquest that erased their memory in an instant. Instead, these societies vanished into the depths of time through a far subtler process. It was the slow erosion of memory, the gradual overwriting of histories by nature and new narratives imposed by colonial powers. The jungle grew back, slowly swallowing stone roads, plazas, and canals, cloaking them in green. But it did not erase them. The stones remained. The shapes persisted beneath layers of leaves and soil. What disappeared was not only the physical, but also the recognition of those complex societies in the minds of later generations. The written records were lost or destroyed. Oral histories were marginalized, dismissed as myth. European chroniclers, arriving with their own worldviews and prejudices, failed to understand or value what they encountered. As the centuries passed, the vast civilizations of the Amazon were declared non-existent or reduced to primitive tribes scattered across the forest. Forgetfulness as history's quieter society. This quiet form of disappearance, historical forgetfulness, is a powerful force. It shapes which stories get told and which are consigned to silence. It determines whose pasts are remembered and whose are erased. The Amazonian peoples endured centuries of marginalization, their achievements minimized by dominant narratives that favored conquest and Eurocentric views of civilization. The loss is not just academic. It has real consequences for indigenous identities, rights, and sovereignty. When history fails to acknowledge the depth and sophistication of these cultures, it undermines their claims to land and self-determination. Moreover, this selective amnesia limits our understanding of humanity as diversity and the many ways people have adapted to their environments. The rediscovery of Amazonian cities beneath the leaves challenges this. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about how history is constructed and who controls its telling. Lessons from the Amazon. Complexity, resilience, and humility. The ancient Amazonian civilizations teach us profound lessons, not only about their own societies, but about the way we think about human history and our relationship with the natural world. Their cities, with intricate networks of roads, plazas, and earth, reveal a complexity that rivals the great civilizations of the Old World. Their sustainable agricultural practices and ecological knowledge show how humans can live in harmony with even the most challenging environments. The resilience of the Amazonese peoples, both ancient and modern, reminds us that history is not a simple tale of rise and fall. It is a story of adaptation, survival, and reinvention. Perhaps most importantly, the Amazon teaches us humility. It challenges the arrogance of seeing history as a linear progression of Western civilization. It invites us to appreciate multiple paths of human development and the richness of diverse cultures. In acknowledging the depth of Amazonian history, we expand our own understanding of what it means to be human. The jungle's silent testimony, revealing the hidden cities. Imagine standing at the edge of the forest, watching the morning light filter through dense foliage. Underneath the canopy, hidden beneath centuries of growth, lie stone roads that once bustled with traders and travelers. Circular plazas, the hearts of social and ceremonial life, wait silently to be buried cities stretch beneath the moss and vines, telling stories in patterns visible only from above or through careful excavation. These are not the ruins of forgotten savages, but the remnants of sophisticated, thriving civilizations. With modern technology, LiDAR scanning, satellite imagery, and advanced archaeology, we are finally peeling back the layers of the jungle's cover. We see the outlines of these lost worlds with new clarity, bridging past and present. The jungle did not erase them. We just stopped looking. A new chapter in history. This revelation opens a new chapter in human history, one that includes the Amazon not as a blank wilderness, but as a cradle of civilization. It demands a rewriting of textbooks and a rethinking of archaeological paradigms. But beyond academic shifts, it is a call to action, to protect what remains of the Amazon, the forests, the rivers, the peoples, and to honor their enduring legacy. To listen to the voices of indigenous communities who continue to live with these ancient landscapes, guardians of knowledge passed down through generations. Their survival is intertwined with the fate of the rainforest itself. A future rooted in the past. The rediscovery of Amazonian civilizations is not just about looking backward. It is about envisioning a future grounded in respect for history, for culture, and for the environment. It is a reminder that human societies are deeply interconnected with their natural surroundings. The lessons of the past can guide us toward more sustainable and equitable ways of living. As we face global environmental crises, the wisdom of the Amazon offers hope and inspiration. Final reflection. The cities beneath the leaves are a testament to human creativity, endurance, and the mysteries that still lie hidden in the world. They remind us that history is never fixed. It is always being rewritten as new discoveries emerge. The jungle is not a silent grave, but a living archive. It calls us to look deeper, to listen more carefully, and to acknowledge the richness of stories long overlooked. In the end, the question is not just what happened to the ancient Amazonian civilizations, but how we choose to remember and learn from them. Because the jungle did not erase them. We just stopped looking. As we come to the end of our journey through the lost empires of the Amazon, I want to thank you for listening and exploring these mysteries with me. The stories of the ancient forest, its people, and their incredible legacy remind us of the deep connection between humanity and nature, a connection we still need today. Rest well. Let these stories settle in your mind and carry with you the lessons of resilience, respect, and wonder. Good night, and until we meet again here on History Wake, keep wondering.